Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today for this first ever Vonage Unlocked developer workshop. And it's actually one that is kind of special to me because we are talking about the Vonage Voice API. And that was the first ever Vonage API I've used, well, Nccl back then. And this is how I ended up in here. So super excited. As of now, I am a developer advocate with Vonage, mostly focusing on low-code technologies, but I'm always excited to try new builder tools and enable as many people as possible to write code and bring their ideas to life. So back to the Vonage Voice API. It is a RESTful API that enables you to make, receive, and control phone calls programmatically. We will start with a couple of key concepts just to bring you up to speed, mostly Vonage terminology and things you need to understand before we get to the code. Then we will make our first phone call. That is, we will write a piece of software that makes this phone ring, after which we will take a short break. Feel free to ask any questions you would like. If you would like, at this point, for me to go over something again, I will happily do so. And also, people in the chat are happy to answer your questions as well. Once we are back from the break, we will switch things around a little. So this time, we will use this phone to call our application. And with the help of one of my dear colleagues, we will set up two-way call. So we will call a Vonage application, and the Vonage application will call another phone. So at the end of the day, we are having a conversation in between two phones. So once we're done with that as well, we will dive into interacting with user input. So if you ever called your doctor's office and was greeted with press 1 to book an appointment, 2 for more details, and so on, then you were providing user input. And we will see how we can interact with that and capture that and use that. So without further ado, let's dive in. First of all, I wanted to talk about call direction in a Vonage context. We talk about inbound and outbound calls. It's important to notice that these are defined from a Vonage point of view. So if it's outbound, it's outgoing. It's going out from Vonage so that Vonage initiates the call. And on the other end, there is an endpoint, for example, a phone that starts ringing. If it's an inbound call, then I am using my phone and calling Vonage. So Vonage is the receiver of the call. Talking about calls in a Vonage context, when we're writing code, all phone numbers need to be used in E164 format. So if you look in the upper right corner, usually we would use UK number like it is on the left-hand side. But when we are writing code for Vonage or even in the dashboard, we need to simplify that. So that means we are taking out any spaces, special characters, dashes, brackets, even the plus sign. So this plus sign sometimes might appear as a double O. We would take out that as well. So in international format, without any special characters and the starting plus or double O. Vonage numbers are virtual numbers. And you can find these in your Vonage dashboard. So if you have already purchased a number, you would find that under numbers, your numbers. Alternatively, you can rent one under by numbers. Once you have one attached to your account, you can click on the pencil sign and exit its config. What I have in here is a phone number enabled for both SMS and voice. For a voice-only number, you would only get what is on the bottom half. So you can forward this to a SIP or another phone number. This would be a really quick setup in the dashboard. My favorite use case for this is you're at an event and you need to be available at that particular event, but only for the duration of the event for a large number of people. So you would share your virtual number, forward it to your personal number, and you would be able to have those conversations during the event. Once you're done with the event, you disconnect it and you move on. Your personal number remains personal and not shared with hundreds of people. But there are so many more exciting things you could do with the Voice API or Vonage numbers that require a Vonage application. And you need to link your Vonage numbers to this application. So let's have a closer look at what application is. You can find these as well in your dashboard. So on the left-hand side, you'll see your applications. If you have none, then none will appear, but you can create a new one just in here. Alternatively, you can use a command line interface or make calls directly to the application API, which takes care of all the setup and management of these applications. So Vonage applications are a one-to-one mapping of the application you are building. And they contain a bunch of config data. First of all, capabilities. Today, we are talking about applications that are voice-enabled, but the Voice API isn't the only API that uses Vonage applications. So these could also be enabled for messages, real-time communications, VBC smart numbers, or soon for video as well. They would contain information about virtual numbers as well. So if you would have numbers linked to this application, they would appear there, and you will also have voice webhooks attached to it. You will need to provide an event webhook and an answer webhook. So while setting it up, it would look like this. First thing to note, make sure the voice capability is enabled, and then the answer and event webhooks are provided. So webhooks. Quick refresher, when working with APIs and integrating with third-party services, you need a way to communicate between the code you're writing and the service you're using. Now, for event management, currently you have mostly two options. One is pulling the API, and the other one is webhooks. From how I see it, pulling the API is like going out to your front door every 5 minutes and checking whether there is someone out there. And the webhooks is setting up a doorbell and telling all your friends or expected guests that they should ring the doorbell if they want you to come to the door. So the way that translates into the API world is that emoji right there with the coding person is going to be us. We would be making regular calls to Vonage asking, is there any data? No. Is there any data? No. Any data? No. Still no data? Oh, here we go, data for you. Any data for me? Nope, not this time. And you kind of get the idea. As opposed to webhooks, where if there is some data, then we will get it. So the way we need to let our friends know that they need to ring the doorbell, we will need to let the server know where to send our data. And that would be an event webhook, for example. So in our case, we will need to provide an event webhook where all our call events will be sent. So Vonage will send in here all the details and events that are going to happen with our applications. On the other end, we also need to provide an answer webhook. Now this is the other way around. So Vonage will be coming here and looking for instructions. And these instructions will be provided in the form of Nccls. Those are Nxmo call control objects. Nxmo is now Vonage. And these Nccls are JSON arrays containing one or more actions. And you can mix these to build the voice experience that you would like. So there is the list of all actions we currently have available, and the ones with the arrow next to them are the ones we are going to talk about today. So the simplest one I usually use is the talk action. It's a simple text-to-speech. So we will be providing the text, and that text will be read out to the caller or the callee. Connect is making the connection in between two endpoints. So in this case, the phone I'm using to call the Vonage number is one endpoint. The phone that will be ringing on the other end, also a physical phone, would be a second endpoint, and these two would be connected. Input, as mentioned before, is going to be the user input. So whenever you use your keypad during a call, that would be an input. That could also be speech as well, but today we are only talking about the digits. And these are a couple of Nccl examples. So upper right corner, simple talk action, and the text we want to be read out. On the left-hand side, it's a more complex Nccl with first talk. So this is used to the developer website that I wanted to select code. Right. So first we have a talk action, and then there is an input action. And all of these have different properties that you can set. For this, we have an Nccl reference, which will be linked in the resources. Also, if Dwayne could quickly grab the Nccl reference, you will find it in the chat as well. So let's quickly jump over and start with the code, because that's why we are here doing a workshop. First, we will make an outbound call. Anyway, a simplified version of it. So we will make a phone ring with code. So for future reference, this coding person is going to be me, the code I'm writing. The server is going to be Vonage, and phone is going to be a physical phone ringing. So to make this phone ring, we are going to make a post request to Vonage. And we are going to send the nccl. So earlier I mentioned that we need to host this nccl at an answer URL, and Vonage will be looking for it. And that's what you would do in a normal situation, like real life use case. But for the sake of getting started, we are just sending it over without running a server on our end or hosting the nccl. It will be a simple talk action, and Vonage will execute the nccl as well. So to get started, let's head over to your dashboard and use this coupon code, which will give you 10 euros credit on your account. That should be more than enough to take you over this workshop and many more to come. So you'll find your dashboard at dashboard.maxmo.com. And if you come under your name and coupons, then enter the coupon code and hit submit, you will see your balance update. So if you didn't save it before, that's 21UNLX5291, which I have already done. So I'm all set. So we said that for more complex use cases, we will need a voice application. So why don't we start by creating one? Again, in your dashboard, go to your applications. I have 2 API keys, but this shouldn't be a problem for you. And if you already have applications on your account, these will appear here, either in list or card format. I prefer list. And let's click on create a new application and start from scratch. So first we will need a name. Hopefully it's not taken. And then we will click on generate public and private key. There's a pop-up asking me to save the file, which I will do. And just be conscious about where that gets saved, because we will need to move it in a bit. Scrolling further down, we are enabling voice capabilities and providing the answer and event URL. At this point, we don't have those URLs, but what we can do is provide example ones. So literally typing out the http example.com/webhooks/answer. And I will use the same format for the event URL, except event instead of answer. All right. And coming further down, everything looks good, and we are generating a new application. Okay, so we're all set. I have in here Visual Studio Code window open. And I am creating a new folder. You are free to follow along with any code editor of your choice. So first, let's make a new empty folder. I'm calling it Unlocked Workshop and opening it up. Perfect. I'll also just start a terminal in here. I prefer to have everything in one place. All right, so we will need a JavaScript file. For example, first call. And let's prepare the dependencies. What are we going to need? We will be using the Node Sdk. So I'll quickly run a npm init. You can go through the options, but for example code, I just use -y, and that will just use default. And now that we have that, we need to install the Node SDK, and that is going to be npm install @vonage / server -sdk. And we are also using the environment variable, so I'll take this opportunity to add .env as well. All right, so we will be using imports because those are now available by default. But for that to work, we will need to add one line in package.json, and that is type module. So package.json, we have added a property of type module. Saved, and we are done with the setup. So let's get started with the actual code. Okay, so dependencies were Node SDK, .env. Let's import those. Instantiate. .env. So we're ready to use environment variables. I'm also taking this opportunity to create a .env file. And now moving on to the Vonage bits. Instantiating Vonage. If you are ever doing this on your own, then a good resource is developer.vonage.com. Works both with Vonage and Nccl. And then we have all the APIs available in here. Today we are doing programmable voice. So you can either go to overview, API reference, or Nccl reference. And in here we have code snippets. So for example, making an outbound call with an Nccl, and then you have the different setup that you need to go through. So you don't really need to remember all these things. You can always go back and check the documentation. Also, if Node is not your preferred programming language, there are other SDKs to pick from. it's good to have it there. Also, we have the API reference. So if you are ever in doubt, you can come in here and check for what parameters you need. So going back to our code, we are instantiating Vonage and constant Vonage new Vonage. Just quickly wanted to show you that, well, I might know this by heart, most of it I do not, and it's not even necessary. So to authenticate with the Vonage Voice API, we will need an application ID. This is a unique identifier of the application we just created, and a private key, the file we just downloaded. The Voice API authenticates using JSON Web Tokens, but since we are using the Node SDK, the SDK takes care of generating the JWT. So we only need to provide the application ID and the private key. So application ID. And we will be using the .m file. So I'll call it app ID. Equal. Going back to the dashboard. And application ID, clicking on that button, copy to clipboard, and we are back, leaving it in there. And in the JavaScript file, that will be process. Of course, I haven't saved the .m file, so it wouldn't recognize it. Right, process.m.app ID. And we also need a private key. So this is not the private key itself, but the path to the private key. Actually, we can do it as an environment variable as well, so that you can quickly change everything that is. Let's call this private key. Or better yet, call it private key path, so that we remember it's a path, not the key itself. And coming over to the .m file, private key path. Now, hopefully you remember where you downloaded that file earlier. So in my case, that goes into downloads, so I can grab it and paste it over to the folder I'm currently working in. So that is Unlocked Workshop. Feel free to use whatever method for doing so. Earlier, I used command line because that's more elegant. But turns out they've had more than one private keys in there, so that catches you out. Important thing is that we have the private key copied over into the working folder, and it also appears in here. It's going to look something like that. But we don't really have to do anything with that. Just provide the path, which is /private.key. All right, and saving the .m file back to the code. So authentication taken care of. Now let's see what goes into making a call. So for that, we are going to use the Vonage calls create function. And we will need to provide this with a couple of parameters. First, we need to specify the destination endpoint, in our case, destination number. And I want to call an actual phone, so type is going to be of phone. And I'll also need to provide a number. Remember, in the A164 format, actually, we can put this in the .m file as well. So process.m and to number. Quickly heading over, add the to number. And you don't necessarily need to provide a from number, but it's handy to do so because otherwise the caller ID, so the thing that when you receive a call, will be unknown caller. So it might be better to use one of your Vonage numbers so that is what gets displayed. Again, that is going to be of type phone. And number, again, let's just and call it Vonage number. Okay, so we don't yet have a Vonage number linked to that application. So coming back to your Vonage dashboard, if you scroll down, you may find numbers listed in here. That is, if you already have purchased some. Just be mindful that these might already be linked to a different application, which in my case isn't an issue. So even though it says it's linked to test app, I am fine with it being disconnected and no longer working with the test app. So that will be breaking the test app. And clicking through link, and now I have a phone number linked to the application I just created. Alternatively, if you have no phone numbers, then down here you can click on Buy More Numbers, select the country you're in. So actually select the country that you can place phone calls to. So me being in the UK, I work with UK numbers because then I can use my phone to call those numbers without being charged extra by a carrier. And for the feature, this time we want it enabled, and type, we really don't mind which kind. I'll just leave it on mobile, and you can even customize it. So if you have a couple of that you would like to be in there, you can put them in there, but I search and usually click buy on the first number. So once you have that and you do have a Vonage number in your account, then we can go back to your applications. The application that we just created, and from the list that appears in here, or even if it's just one number, click on the link button as I did earlier. You can unlink it in the same manner. But right now, the goal is to leave one number linked to the application. We can grab it from here and come back to the .env file and paste it in. Now remember, as we discussed it earlier, in a Vonage context, we need to take out extra spaces, any brackets, even the plus sign, so the number remains a simple one. All right. And we are saving that file. We have a to number, we have a from number. The only thing we are lacking is the instructions. So what is going to happen in this call? And for that, we need an Nccl, which again is a JSON array of actions. And we are using a talk action with a text of, well, really anything you would like, but I would like to welcome you to the first Vonage Unlocked workshop. Make sure it does have a couple of seconds worth of length so that you can clearly hear the message. All right. And yep, callback never hurts. Okay, so quick click again. Imported Vonage.env, instantiated both of those, and then the Vonage calls create function to make the actual call. So coming back to the terminal window, let's run it. That is Node, and in my case, it's first call.js. All right. That was not expected. Oh, yes, of course. As usual, the comma. Well, console log, I'm just seeing a question. It will throw out whatever comes through. So in this case, that is perfect for me. So it's always interesting because these never happen during drag events. So we have a bad request. Is this going to be one of those? So Dwayne is asking if I have an answer URL. I do not have, and this example doesn't need one. Oh, whether I have it in the dashboard, that should be in there. But so those fields need to be filled out, but we are not using those. And I am perfectly convinced that I messed something up in spelling. So console log, that should be just the way it is. Okay, at this point, I'm going to make magic happen, but if this doesn't fix it, then it wasn't spelling. Okay, so code is fine. Package.json is fine. And the variables we are using should be fine. But just in case, I'm going to create a new application and buy a new number and link that back in there and see if that was the issue. Okay, scroll back to see the error message. So that is the part that I said we don't have to touch because the SDK is doing it. All right. Again, capabilities, voice. Thank you, Amanda. I do have that, but the code is fine. It's something else went wrong, not the script. So if not, okay, feature, we want voice, search. I'll get the first number, select my API key and buy. Perfect. Now back to my applications, the second app that I created. And there is the new number I purchased. It appears not linked, and I'm clicking through. Now it is linked. So I am grabbing that value and putting it back into the .env file, removing the extra characters and spaces. And we also need to replace the application ID. Also, if someone was following along, please let me know how you're getting on, because this shouldn't be an issue that happens for anyone else. Right, application ID. We have private key generated and downloaded. So this is 1851, right? Okay. All right. So, same issue. We are currently at the hour mark. So, how about we take a short break, because I'll need to have a second look at this. And in the meantime, let me know how you're getting on, because at this point it should have worked. So if you followed along and you're not having authentication issues like I do, then that should be your phone ringing. And in the meantime, I'll dig a little deeper in here. And if you'd like to check out the GitHub repo with the code, then I'll leave this slide up. So the first one is a step-by-step tutorial. So whatever we are doing today, that you can follow step-by-step at a later point, and then the GitHub repo will have the tray files that we are writing today. So I will be back in a couple of minutes. All right, welcome back. Hope you had a good break. I did learn to spell in those 10 minutes. Whoever said that spelling is more important than problem solving as a skill for a developer was definitely right. So back to the code. Remember when I said that we are going to name private key variable as private key path, so that we remember that it's a path? Now that is extremely useful, especially if you use the same variable name both in the .env file and in the one referencing it, because unfortunately I was using private key in one place and private key path in the other, which does explain why I was failing to authenticate. So now that that's sorted, let's see and run the application again. And as you can already see in there, but let's just clear it. And Node first call JS to put it on speaker so that you can hear it. And it's ringing. Workshop. Okay, that was really brave. Actually, let's take this opportunity for me to show you something cool. Well, that's not a short message. It did take really short time to say. And you couldn't really hear most of it, probably. So something I really like about the Voice API is that you can make this text sound a bit more human, as opposed to the robot voice that you just heard. And under guides, if you scroll down at some point, overview, that's the one. And Or, I'll just quickly search for it. SSML. All right, so SSML tags, which is used for customizing speech. So that SSML stands for Speech Synthesis Markup Language, and you can incorporate it into your talk actions so that it gives a little bit of a personality to your text. Or you can manipulate the speed of it. So let's see. Where would we go about the speed of it? Yeah, here we are. So rate. And we can set the rate to extra slow. So let's see, how do I do that? Inside of a text parameter, yes. So let's just quickly go down here, find the slow one. Well, that's actually a good mix of different versions. So I grab that text, coming back and pasting it in here instead of the hello message. What? Yeah, that's it. Why do I have a feeling that this is gonna backfire? Okay, and so, all right, I'm just trying to see where the different modifier goes. Okay. Okay. So
But our princess is in another castle.
okay, not sure how much of that came through, but it did work in a different prosody. So you can definitely come play with it. As Sml tags are great. The better you can read, the more great they are. Yeah, have a play with it. Okay, now that I'm brave, I'm gonna attempt this one as well. And thanks for the tip. Yeah, we're just gonna go with it.
I am loud and proud, quick as a cricket and can.
Okay, so that's about as much speech synthesis as we're gonna go with. Thank you so much, Sima, for catching that. Okay, so the other way around, let's now use our application as the receiving end. So let's receive a phone call programmatically. In this scenario, we will use this phone to call a Vonage number. Vonage will then go to the answer webhook that we need to implement this time around and actually expose to the internet. Then we will respond with an Nccl that Vonage will interpret and execute so that a second phone would be ringing, and then these two phones would be connected. All right. So in this case, we said we need to host the Nccl at an answer URL. Now we are developing on local hosts, so Vonage has no way of accessing our local host, and we need to expose our local server to the internet. One tool that I like using for this is ngrok. If you haven't already, you can download it at ngrok.com/download. And it is really handy for creating a secure tunnel so that your local host is accessible publicly on the internet. And you can also inspect and requests and responses. It has a nice inspector interface, and you can also reply requests so that you don't always have to, for example, place a call using a phone. You can just click a button and it simulates it. Okay, so closing down first call. We'll hang around to the .m file, and I'm just creating a new file in here in the same folder, and that is going to be answer call, for example. All right, clearing terminal. Okay, so let's quickly think about what do we need. So we have an incoming call. We need to host the answer URL. So first, we need to run a server, in this case, an Express server. So I will take care of the dependencies for that. That is npm install Express. All right, that looks good. Coming back to the JavaScript file, importing Express. From address, then I'm not sure yet whether we are going to need it, but let's just import .env because you can then configure and customize it however you want and use those variables. And from okay, instantiating that. And starting. All right, and now on to the Vonage bits. So we need to register a route for the answer webhook. So we will do that. We know that Vonage will be making a GET request to the answer endpoint. So we will do a app.get. And then I like to put webhooks in there. And then /answer. Okay, taking request and response. Okay, so what do we need to do? First, let's build the Nccl. Much like before, we are building that JSON array. First, let's say hi. So that's an action talk. It's a text. So let's say maybe a please wait while we connect you, as the next Nccl action will be a connect action to connect the first caller to a second person with a phone. Okay. So action. Connect. But we, again, from could be one of your Vonage numbers, or otherwise, if you don't provide the from, it's going to be unknown color. So I'll just use, if you're directly providing it, then you put it as a string. But we have it as an environment variable. So that's going to be the Vonage number. Right. We have a connect action, the from number. And now we need an endpoint. So what are we connecting to? In this case, it's going to be of type phone. And for the number, now this is going to be a little bit of a weird situation if you are alone like I am. Because the to number will be the destination number. So if you do have someone next to you and you can use another phone, then feel free to put that number in here as a string. But I don't really have, so I will put the to number as the number I used for the previous example, and I'll be relying on one of my kind colleagues to call me at the moment when we are done with this. So number is the to number that we are grabbing it from the environment. Okay. So we have built the Nccl. Now we need to return it. I'll just quickly make sure I know. Yeah, format document goes. Okay. So that closes the Nccl, which is great. And that means that after that, we return the Nccl. All right. So at this point, we still need to start the Express server at port 3000, for example, and provide a callback. And that's going to be a server listening at localhost 3000. All right. So we're using express.env. We have set the route for the answer webhook. So whenever Vonage makes a GET request, we are responding with the Nccl. Now, let's expose our local server to the internet. Well, actually, we can just start it locally for now. So that's running this node answer call. Node.js and server listening at localhost. Please open in the right window. Of course you do that. Okay, so going to the browser, and we are looking at localhost 3000. Now there is nothing in there, but if I continue to type webhooks and answer, then you can see the Nccl. We have a talk action with please wait while we connect you, and then a connect action, which is going to connect. Well, whoever is calling, that person will be connected to the second one. So what we need to do right now is expose our server to the internet. Do not make it confusing. I'll use a different terminal. So if you have downloaded ngrok, go to where that executable file is. I copied it to my home directory to make it easier. So that's going to be /ngrok http and 3000. There's other options for, you can provide it with more details than that and maybe get a customized URL, but for now I am fine with the randomized one. Quick note, if you don't have an ngrok account, you can still use it, but these won't persist. So every time you, well, first it will expire quite soon. I think now they are down to an hour, but you can create a free account, and while that's still something random like this, it will persist. So I definitely recommend you do that. So now we grab this URL and go back to your dashboard. Dashboard. And to the application that we created. And remember when we provided the example URLs? Now I'm replacing example.com with my ngrok URL so that I have actual webhooks in there. All right, and save changes. Of course, access is denied. That means I'm usually logged out. Yes, I need to log in again. And let's see if any of those changes. Nope, I'll need to do that again. And just a quick double check to see that I didn't make a spelling mistake. I did not, hopefully. And now save changes. Okay. And if everything works, then I can now run it. Actually, and now I need to call my phone number. So the one that is linked in there. Bear with me while I type it in. So that's awesome.
Please wait while we connect you.
And now this weird thing is happening where I'm calling myself. But at least we know it's working. So if one of my colleagues would be as kind as to call that number. Actually, I'll just leave it in here in the chat because it's only working for now. Oh, and there we go. And it's on speaker.
Hi, how's it going, Express?
Hey, thank you. And
great job with Photoshop. Super thrilled to be here.
all right. So this is quite funny because I can hear that it's Beth, but I cannot hear what she's saying because I have noise cancelling earphones that are not connected to the phone. And there is another call coming in. So thank you all for doing that. And bye, Beth. So okay, so that was an incoming call with a connect action. And now, finally, I wanted to touch on user interaction because there's a lot of exciting things you can do. For example, the interactive voice response systems that a lot of offices use. For example, doctor's office, bank. For me, these two are where I usually interact with an interactive voice response system. And today, we are going to work with DTMF input. So that stands for dual tone multi-frequency signals. And these are the digits you on your keypad. So I'm not sure if you can hear it, but even when dialing, no, that's not it. While in a call, we will see in a bit, there is a unique tone for every digit and the star and pound characters. And it's used by phone systems to transmit these signals. Yes, as mentioned before, it is used in interactive voice response systems, or, for example, if you are joining a meeting by Google Meets, for example, often asks for a PIN. So when joining, you will need to provide a PIN, and you are using DTMF signals in that case as well. As for what we're building, we are starting with the red phone and making a call to the Vonage Voice API. Well, our Vonage number, the virtual number. Then the Vonage API will go and make a GET request to the answer webhook we set up. We will respond with an Nccl containing a talk action as we've been using, prompting the user to press a digit, and then an input action, which is an instruction for collecting user input. In this case, DTMF, it could also be speech. So once Vonage has collected the DTMF input, it passes it on to an event webhook that we have previously provided at /DTMF by making a post request. And in here, we will respond with a new Nccl that is, in this case, a talk action where we'll read out, well, have Vonage read out the digit the user pressed. So, for example, I am making this call. I press a digit. I press 3, and I will hear from the phone, you pressed 3. Now, this is a simple example, but you get the idea, and you can build on it like a whole interactive voice response system. All right, and coming back to VS Code, let's create another file. For example, user input. Okay. So Actually, why don't we take the code from what we just built and modify it in a way so that we achieve this schema? Because if you look at it, the inbound call, well, if we leave the connect aside, it was the first part from the inbound call with user input schema. So the first half we already have. We just need to switch out the connect action for an input. And we have already implemented an answer webhook. So we only need a DTMF. So let's see how we do that. Grabbing the code from answer call and pasting it into user input.js. Quickly thinking about whether we need to install something or not, but I don't believe we do. So yes, we are expecting Vonage to make a GET request to the answer URL. That is fine so far. Talk, well, don't wait while we connect you, but please press a digit. And then the next action will not be a connect. It will be an input. We do not need from or endpoint, but we do need to provide an event URL. So we need to let Vonage know that we will expect the DTMF payload on this /DTMF event URL. And I'm providing the events URL. And when using ngrok, I like to template this one because then it catches up on any changes. So first, we need to get the HTTP part. So that is request protocol. See what you used up there. I tend to shorten request and response to rec and res. If you use request, spell it out down here as well. Then the slash part. And we need the host name. So again, to request get host. Okay, and finally, we need to add that /DTMF. And once that is all set, we return the Nccl. Okay, so we are done with the answer URL. Now, we need to register the second route, the one for DTMF. So we know that we are going to get a post request from Vonage. So that's going to be app.post. And the endpoint is DTMF. All right. So first in here, we would need to get the DTMF payload from the request body. But if I try to run this, it won't work because we need to parse the request body. And for that, we used to use body parser, but there is something nice and express happening, so we no longer need to install that. We can just deconstruct express the JSON part. Okay, that is still good, and then that use JSON. And now we can parse the request body coming in. All right, so back to our DTMF route. We have the DTMF value, well, the payload. And now we are constructing the Nccl to be returned. So that is going to be essentially we're going to do a talk action that reads back the DTMF payload that was sent. So action is talk, and for text, it will be a templated value of you press, and then DTMF. Okay. Oh, and then we also need to return the Nccl. Okay. So we have an answer webhook, we have a DTMF webhook, both routes implemented. And it looks like we are done. So let's run it. Okay, server listening at localhost. Also, I feel like this is a good moment to show you what the ngrok inspector looks like. So that is going to be localhost 4040. And welcome to your ngrok inspector. And here you can see all your events coming through, which currently are 404 because we don't have an event webhook implemented. But if you look on the right-hand side for parameters, then all of those are coming through. So calls and then even call status. Let's clear it for now. And now I'm going to call my number. And we'll see the events appearing in there. I'll just quickly go over to remind myself which number I'm calling. Yes, that one. Okay.
Please press a digit. You press 1234.
So there is a default timeout. I was just pressing more digits in the hopes that you could hear the sound going through. Because that is what DTMF signals are about. Okay, so let's see what happened first. First, we got an inbound. Remember, we talked about call direction, inbound, so incoming to Vonage call. We have from number and a couple of other details. UUID is a unique identifier for the call. So if you look at that, it will be the same for all these steps because all of those are part of the same call. And this is when the Vonage Voice API hit the answer webhook. So it got the Nccl. Then we have an answered call, and it has collected and posted the DTMF input to our DTMF webhook. All right. Now let's fix this for because well, it's not nice, and also it's always good practice to have an event webhook implemented. So just as we had the previous ones here after the post DTMF, I will add another one. As we could see in the inspector, these are coming through as get. So let's add the get. And that is /webhooks/event. And then taking request response. And so in this case, what do you log out? These are query parameters, and this is the information that I would want to come through as a call event. So I'm logging request.query. All right. And we also need to respond to the Vonage API with a 200 OK. So sending a status of 200 dot and all right. So now if we save that and restart the server, I could do a couple of things. But let's replay the first one. This is an inbound call, so let's replay and see what happens. Okay, so instead of 44 not found, it was a 200 okay. What I really like about this ngrok inspector is that you can also replay certain requests with modifications, so then it opens it up like that, and you are free to change anything really. So for example, the DTMF payload in the body, instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, I want it to be 6, and then click replay. Not that exciting in this particular use case, but for example, when you're debugging Nccls, it might well come in handy. Oh, and you do have also the response. So for each event, I did not always scroll through. And that is it. Interacting with user input.